Today we will be walking through the new Quick Action Guide for classrooms and offices, which you will be receiving soon if you have not already. This guide will replace the current flip chart, which may be hanging near a door in your workspace or classroom. The Quick Action Guide is provided by the Butte County Office of Education, Office of the Superintendent, and provides staff and teachers with an easy-to-follow, intuitive, immediate plan of action for almost any emergency. I'm Chris Roberts, and I'm the Director of Emergency Preparedness, School Safety, and Security for the Butte County Office of Education. This guide is comprised of 6 basic actions. One of these 6 actions will be appropriate for almost any event, and the purpose of a quick action is to engage in immediate response to a critical situation in an effort to safeguard lives during the first few minutes of a critical event. The Quick Action Guide does not replace school safety plans, critical incident plans, or emergency operations plans. These guides are simply to equip teachers and staff to take immediate action when faced with a critical incident to protect themselves and their students. The Quick Guide is intended to hang on a wall near an exit door, with the first page of the guide showing outward. This page shows 6 actions: evacuate, shelter, secure, reunification, stay, and lockdown. At the bottom of the guide, tabs indicate the action page to go for more information regarding that action. The last page of the guide shows a solid green on one side, solid red on the other. We'll get to that in a few minutes. There are 2 guide versions, one for classrooms, one for offices. This is indicated at the bottom left corner of the page of the guide. Both versions are very similar and the layout is the same. Differences can be seen in the actions to be taken, which I will explain. To use the guide, simply remove it from the wall where it's hanging. If you flip the first page up, you will see the back side of the page contains instructions on how to use the red and green cards, which comprise the last page of the guide. The red-green card is used to communicate the need for help, injuries, and major problems existing within the classroom or office where you're located. Primarily used during an issue or situation, these cards are a visual communication tool, which most first responders are now familiar with nationwide. If there are injuries requiring medical attention within your room, you will place the red card in your exterior window. This will alert responders of a priority location to reach in order to rescue those who are injured much more quickly. If you do not have a window, wait for first responders to yell through your locked or barricaded door, asking, "Is anyone injured?" Only after being asked this question, or one similar, detach the card and slide it under the door with the appropriate color facing up. Red side up if there are injuries, green side up if there are no injuries. You will notice the cards contain boxes on one end, with the words triage count above them. The boxes may be surrounded by green, yellow, or red borders. These borders indicate the severity of injury, utilizing the universal triage method. Utilizing this method, you will identify the number of injured persons in your control area. This reduces the time it takes to get medical rescue to those who need it most. Delay in treatment is the most significant contributor to death during an incident of school violence. You may consider utilizing the green card even if there are injuries, as long as they are minor and the delay in treatment will not endanger the injured persons. Remember, the purpose of the red and green cards is to quickly get rescue personnel to those who are injured and need it most. First responders will eventually rescue everyone, but using these cards will substantially reduce the risk of death to those in our care. During an emergency, you may utilize any marker available to write on any portion of this guide, including the red and green cards. If possible, utilize fat markers so numbers are visible to first responders from a distance. If you can use a dry erase marker, it will allow you to change the numbers should it become necessary. The important thing is, use these cards. If you turn to page 2 of the guide, you will see boldly titled Evacuate in colored green. The purpose of an evacuate action is to rapidly move people from one location to another when it's determined that it's safer to move to another location than stay where we are. An evacuate action may be called by a site administrator or designee. An evacuate order should be indicated by an alarm, such as a fire alarm, and accompanied by an announcement. There is a reason we now recommend an announcement accompany the fire alarm. The trend in school shooting incidents changes over time and sees improved tactics employed by shooters. The latest tactics observed show the shooter activated an alarm in order to elicit students and staff to exit their rooms. The simple addition of a concurrent announcement to an alarm removes the ability of someone to create this type of situation. In addition to an alarm, the announcement may sound like this: "Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate for fire," in which case you would simply engage your fire drill protocols. Or it may sound like this: "Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate for gas leak. Immediately evacuate to the field and move 300 feet upwind." If this were the announcement, it would follow the instructions in the announcement, evacuating to the field, ensuring you move 300 feet away from the school building and upwind. The announcements are designed to make it clear which action should be taken. When an action is announced, grab this guide and flip to the appropriate action page. Looking at the front of the page, which says Evacuate, you see a green box titled Action. You will notice the text within these boxes turned sideways. This is done so you can place the guide in the same orientation as your clipboard or your binder, so you're able to read it easily. Looking at the action box for Evacuate, you will see it shows a list of actions for you to take during evacuation. Number 1, grab the emergency backpack that holds your class list as you exit. Number 2, evacuate the building according to the established evacuation route to a location at least 300 feet from the building. Number 3, ensure that special needs persons in the immediate area are aided by designees. Number 4, during the evacuation, remain alert to any potential hazards in the area. If you encounter fire, any other significant hazard, or find the designated pathway blocked, seek an alternative route. Number 5, upon reaching the designated assembly areas, account for students. If all students are present, hold up your green card. If all students are not present, write the missing student's name on the red card and hold it up. Notice we are not placing numbers on the red card at this time. Number 6, stay in place. Do not let students back into the building for any reason. Number 7, remain alert to potential dangers in the area and properly supervise students under your care. Wait for the announcement of all clear before returning to the building. Okay, we've heard the alarm, accompanied by an announcement to evacuate, grabbed our quick action guide, turned to the page, followed the items in the action box. Now what? Well, once we've evacuated to a safe location and have reported anyone who is missing, we turn to the back side of the page. Here you will see incident-specific information commonly found or associated with an evacuation. On this one, we see fire or smoke, chemical spill, gas leak, hazmat, explosion, and suspicious device or bomb. By this point in the evacuation, you should have an idea of what's going on. The administrator will have communicated with you the cause of the problem while you were taking action to get to safety. Once the problem is identified, here's a list of suggestions which you may want or need to engage. Some may apply to you as a teacher, some as an administrator, or some to support staff. Based on your role, it is easy to determine what you should do if faced with one of these situations. I'd like to point out explosion. The first point under explosion says, if it is not safe to leave, duck cover and hold. Wait a minute, if this is an evacuation card, why would duck cover and hold be on here? The reason is this. If there's an explosion, our natural reaction is to get away. If there were an explosion in your parking lot, we naturally think evacuation would be appropriate. Because of that, this is provided on the back of the evacuation page to suggest what to do if faced with this particular type of incident. For example, if there were an explosion in your parking lot, your first thought would be to evacuate. So you grab this guide, find the evacuate card, look at the back, and you see explosion where you would expect to find it. But as this indicates, it may not be safe to leave. This would cause you to assess the situation to determine if evacuation is actually the safest thing to do in this situation. Not every situation can be predicted exactly, nor its events determined ahead of time. And that's the purpose of this guide, to provide simple yet effective guidance for you to make a decision. Also included on the back of each card is a box with a tip contained within. In this case, our tip says, an evacuate action may result in a relocation for reunification action. Be prepared to adjust as situations evolve rapidly. This is here as a reminder, just because we executed a successful evacuation does not necessarily mean the situation is over, and we need to be ready to take any other action if necessary. Turning the page, you see we land on the card titled Relocation/Reunification. Secondary to the evacuation alert, this process is engaged when we need to connect students with parents and guardians after an incident concludes. This will often occur at an off-campus site. Leaving the campus is called relocation. Reuniting is called reunification. As you saw on the evacuation card, there is an alert signal notifying you that this is the action we will be engaging as a school. You see that listed under option 1 and option 2 under the alert signal. Also, you notice there is no alarm, only an announcement, as indicated next to the alert signal in purple. This card also has an action box turned sideways. The steps within the action box are to guide you through the process of relocating and reunifying our students and their caregivers. On the back of the card are prompts and reminders of what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and who does it. In a stressful situation, it's easy to forget simple things that we learn, unless we regularly train on them, so these reminders are here to help us keep on track should we engage this type of action. Turning the page once more brings us to shelter. The purpose of the shelter action is to provide protection from flying debris during earthquake, toxic chemicals or gas during a spill or attack, or severe weather. This action is called through an alert signal announcement only. The announcement will sound something like shelter, shelter, shelter for earthquake, duck cover and hold. When this alert signal is given, repeat the instructions to the students to duck, cover, and hold. The state of California mandates that we teach principles of duck, cover, and hold in all our schools to be prepared for earthquakes. Practicing this action as part of routine drills at the school site is important, but it's also mandated by law, just as fire drills are, just not as often. For events of severe weather, an announcement of shelter, shelter, shelter for severe weather, move inside and stay away from windows would be given. Notice the instruction to stay away from windows. Instructions like these are given in the announcement following the shelter, shelter, shelter alert to provide staff with a little more knowledge as to the current situation. It is important for administrators to keep this in mind when providing these announcements. Simply calling an alert signal of shelter, shelter, shelter does not provide enough information for classroom teachers to know how to shelter appropriately. For instance, option 2 on this card shows an example for a hazmat situation, where the announcement would also include seal all doors and windows. Sealing doors and windows would not be appropriate shelter response during an earthquake, where we should instead be using duck, cover, and hold. Again, the front of this card has an action box provided. This one is slightly different than what you've seen because it provides actions for 2 types of events associated with a shelter alert. Please take a minute to read through these so you're familiar with them. On the back of this card, you once again see a list of events often associated with a shelter action, along with points to consider if you find yourself facing one of these types of situations. Please familiarize yourself with the content on this page prior to placing it on your wall and review it regularly so as to be able to recall key elements during an emergency. The next card is a stay action. This alert signal is given through an announcement and simply says, stay, stay, stay out of the way. The purpose of this action is simply as an advisement. However, it's an important advisement. During an emergency, such as a medical emergency or mental health crisis, services need to get through campus quickly. Stay alerts the school to activity occurring on property, while establishing that there's no need to take any action other than to stay out of the way. And this puts the entire school community at ease when they then hear sirens and see responders on ground. The action box on this card reminds us of good points to remember during this type of incident where a student or staff member is in need of medical services or something similar. During a stay action, stay where you are and continue normal operations or instruction, unless you're tasked with a specific duty. Do not leave the room to see what's happening, as this will only contribute to the problem. Assure students that everything is fine, let everyone know they're not in danger despite seeing or hearing responders and sirens. If you're in an open area, moving students away from the access gates and walkways to allow responders easy access is helpful. If you're involved in the situation, clearly state what you need. Monitor your students. Be prepared to rapidly implement an evacuation or lockdown if directed to do so. Situations can escalate or de-escalate quickly. On the back of this card, you see suggestions for modeling calm and optimistic behavior, in addition to points you may want to discuss with the class, such as, if you experience any thoughts or feelings as a result of a crisis event at school or elsewhere, please reach out to a teacher or counselor. This type of information is included on the back of this card to help you help your students. Card number 5 shows the action alert of secure. The purpose of this alert is precautionary. It rapidly increases the level of security within a school. Exterior doors and main interior doors are locked to deny a dangerous person access to the facility. Staff and students may continue productive activities in a limited fashion. It's usually for police activity near the school, or a hostile visitor in the office that's not deemed an immediate threat to the safety of the school. This alert signal will be delivered by an announcement sounding something like this. Secure, secure, secure the campus for a problem in the area. This really provides all the information you need to know. It lets you know to lock your door, but it also lets you know that the problem is not in your hallway, and the problem is not somebody threatening the lives of the school population. The problem is most likely off-site. It may also be on-site and non-violent. An administrator may provide a more detailed alert signal, such as secure, secure, secure the school for police activity occurring off-site. As with the other cards, there is an action box containing instructions for you to follow. Take a moment to read through those. On the back of the secure action card, you see suggestions for how to handle a situation where this action might be appropriate, since you may be the one faced with a situation and calling for a secure action alert yourself. If you look at hostile student, visitor, or parent, it's important to identify the initial behavior and whether or not the behavior poses a risk or threat to the school population. While somebody yelling may seem scary and make you feel like you're in a dangerous situation, that may not be the case. Identifying defensive behaviors versus risk behaviors may be useful in deciding to engage in conversation or get away. Defensive behavior looks like hostility, where we see harshness, yelling, swearing, maybe intimidation type of behavior such as posturing. These types of behaviors can often be de-escalated. However, risk behaviors are much more dangerous and may pose a risk to your safety. De-escalation strategies do not generally work for somebody engaging in risk behaviors. It is important to note, however, we are talking about the layperson, not professional behavior intervention specialists or first responders. These groups of people are often equipped with special skills where de-escalation may still be effective. But for most people, behaviors which may cause risk of personal safety, such as grabbing, hitting, kicking, punching, pulling, or choking, should not be engaged, and you should distance yourself and anyone you're responsible for from the problem. In a situation where a secure action is called, there may be appropriate for the entire school to secure, but one room where the problem is occurring may need to evacuate. It's okay to engage any of these 6 actions as appropriate, and the action may not need apply to the entire school. A school may implement several actions in different areas of the school to appropriately handle any given situation. Feel free to read through these de-escalation strategies and practice them with your peers. If your school is interested in obtaining more detailed training and de-escalation strategies for your staff, please reach out to the superintendent's office. Our final action is one almost everyone is familiar with, and that is lockdown. Lockdown has become nationally known primarily because of active shooter, or what is now called active assailant, situations. A lockdown serves one purpose, and should only be used when danger is imminent. Lockdown requires that all staff and students seek as much physical safety from the physical assault as possible by utilizing physical barriers and hiding places. This is an emergency response to an immediate danger. The alert signal for a lockdown is an announcement and will sound like this: lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Locks lights out of sight. If a lockdown action is called, do not delay. Your life is in danger. I will not sugarcoat this type of situation. The Butte County Office of Education will be providing training to its schools for situations related to this action. So what is the difference between lockdown and secure? The action taken is somewhat similar, in that doors are physically locked, creating physical barriers between potential danger and school populations. However, a lockdown is called when there is imminent threat to the school population, not just a potential threat. If a lockdown is called, immediately clear the hallway and outdoor areas by moving into the nearest classroom. Close your locked classroom door. If you are not in a location with a lockable door, move students to a more secure area if possible. Gather students and visitors to an interior block wall out of sight and turn out the lights. Keep all persons away from the doors and windows to limit visibility. If possible, barricade the door and pull window shades. Ignore all bells and alarms unless otherwise instructed. This we mentioned earlier when we talked about evacuation. Allow no one in or out of your classroom until uniformed responders open the door. It's important to note that uniformed responders will be provided keys to access the building upon their arrival. Remain quiet. Silence all cell phones, but not turn them off. When law enforcement asks if anyone inside is injured, this is when you slide your red or green card under the door. Red side up if you have injuries in your room. Green side up if there are no injuries. It's important to remember, police are not there for you. They are there to stop the threat. They will come back when it's safe and will coordinate other units and rescue teams to get to you for injuries. As soon as safe to do so, account for your students and report them through Catapult EMS or other means. Utilize your red and green cards. Be ready for an evacuation to the instructed reunification point. Following a lockdown for an active incident, it is likely a relocation action will be called, so be ready for this. The back of the lockdown card notes steps to take in the event of a disruptive or unruly person who is threatening, or the event of a weapons use or armed intruder on the school campus. As this is extremely important, let's read through this together. For a disruptive or unruly person who is threatening, notify the office of your situation by the best available means. This could be sending someone to the office, calling the office, yelling for help, sending a note, sending a text, using Catapult EMS, etc. Instruct others to move away from the individual or the area. This can be accomplished by instructing your class to go to the office. Keep a calm demeanor and speak in a calm and firm voice. If possible, seek a position of safety by positioning a physical barrier between yourself and the individual. For example, take a position behind a desk or a counter. Consider potential escape routes for yourself and others in the event the individual becomes combative. Visually scan the individual for any signs that they may have a weapon. If you notice bulges in clothing or see part of a weapon protruding from their clothing, such as a knife in a pocket or the butt of a handgun in the waistband, notify the office immediately. Call for a lockdown and move all students to a safe area, following lockdown procedures. You do not have to actually see a weapon in order to call for a lockdown. Even if you suspect there may be a weapon, call for a lockdown. If you are wrong, no harm done. If you are right and did not call a lockdown, the result could be catastrophic. Do not physically confront the individual unless you or a student are attacked or an attack appears imminent. If you decide that it is appropriate to use physical force, use only the amount of force necessary to overcome the threat of harm. Follow lockdown procedures. Moving over to weapons use / armed intruder. If you witness a weapons use incident, call for a lockdown and call 911. Notify your administrator as quickly as it is safely possible. If you're outside, move off campus if necessary, or get to your room and lock it. Immediately clear students from hallways and bathrooms outside the classroom by moving them into your classroom. Be careful not to let the shooter in. Close your locked door leading to hallways, common areas, and outside. Move students out of view, turn off lights, and pull shades on windows to limit visibility. Barricade your door if possible. Do not allow anyone in the room. Make it impossible to get in. You can do this by stacking tables and chairs and cabinets in front of your doors. Ignore bells and alarms unless they're otherwise instructed through an announcement. An assailant may have pulled the alarm to lure you out. Allow no one in or out of your classroom until uniformed officers open your door. Remain quiet. If there is an immediate threat, the shooter is entering your room. Tell students to run to a place of safety or fight the shooter if running away is not an option. Depending on your room, you will most likely be able to decide this ahead of time. When safe to do so, take attendance and report missing or extra students by text, email, or phone for Catapult EMS to the office unless instructed differently. When the weapons have been dropped or discarded, secure the area where it is located. It is best not to attempt to handle any weapon yourself. Notify your administrator or a responding public safety personnel immediately. A weapons use scene is a crime scene. No attempt should be made to clean up blood or other evidence without the approval of the senior law enforcement official. There may be hazards from blood or other bodily fluids at the scene. Do not touch these. Take pictures before washing yourself off and collect soiled clothing in paper bags for evidence. Remember to use your red and green cards to indicate if there are injuries that need attention. And finally, the next page is the red and green card. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to use this card, tear it from the book and use it. Use the green, yellow, and red boxes to indicate the number of injuries using the universal triage method. Green represents minor injuries which do not cause risks to life. Yellow represents injuries which a person has sustained, but they will most likely live for an hour or more if it's not treated right away. Red represents injuries which are life-threatening. Head injuries, difficulty breathing, large wounds, losing blood, etc. are examples of these types of injuries. These people need immediate medical attention. There is one more category, not on these cards, and that is black. In another training, we will go over universal triage methodology and include black, but for purposes of these cards, we use green, yellow, and red. The next phase of an incident in which we use these cards will require team assignments according to an incident command model. But again, these are simply quick action guides for you as a staff member or classroom teacher to be able to take immediate and appropriate action in the first few minutes of an incident to save lives. If you or your school would like further training on this guide or any other topic which you feel is important to the safety of your school site, please reach out to the superintendent's office for coordination. If you need to replace a guide or your site needs more guides, please follow your procedures for obtaining supplies. Quick action guides are available through the Butte County Office of Education, Office of the Superintendent.